Hello, hello, you beautiful souls. Welcome to the Awakening with Michelle Thornton podcast, where we talk all things life, love, spirituality, law of attraction, and all of that juicy goodness. In this very first episode, we are going to dive into who I am, where I came from, and how I got here. And it is going to be a series. I'm not sure how many episodes it will take. Your girl likes to talk, hence why I'm here. So it could be a long series. We're just going to go with the flow and see what happens, which has been my life lesson, is not planning life and pivoting and moving with the waves and just going with the flow. So let's dive in. For those of you that don't know, I am an intuitive reader, a Reiki practitioner. I was a resigned 17-year high school health and fitness teacher, specializing in meditation, mindfulness, nutrition, and obviously just teaching kids how to be freaking awesome. And then I transitioned into readings, Reiki, life coaching, a mentorship program, guiding people on their spiritual awakening. And then I started YouTube as well. So I've had a YouTube channel for a little over a year now. Woo woo. I was so proud of myself. I always said I wanted to do that for years. And a podcast wasn't something I always dreamt of doing or wanted to do, but I feel like the universe and my guides and angels just keep chirping in my ear. Every week I have somebody saying, Michelle, you should do a podcast. Michelle, you should do this. And I know through certain spiritual teachers, they've guided me and told me that life brings us our next steps. And that is one of my favorite things to talk about, to teach about, to guide others with, is teaching them how to work with the universe, using God as our CEO, our beacon, our lighthouse, and having the universe lead us and our higher selves to what's best for us. It knows, and we have to get our egos out of the way and just move with the flow of life. So here I am. I was feeling the nudge, and I know I took a fear course this past summer called Fear Alchemy with Ben Harris, and he is so amazing. Go sign up if you haven't already. I'll leave everything in the description. But I now know, and I kind of knew this, I kind of stumbled across it when I was younger, but anytime I felt fear and I felt my heart pounding out of my chest and my hands shaking, I knew it was something I had to do. Like instinctively, I just was like, oh, fuck. I have to do this now because now I feel my body reacting and this is something that I probably desire to do. And then when I took the fear course, I was listening to Ben talk and he was saying all of these things. And I'm like, wow, I kind of was already doing it. And now I'm like educated on it. And now I can maybe even help my clients step through and follow their fear. And it's so unique because as I dive into my story in a little bit, I taught high school kids, right? And I will eventually get into the story, but I made a mindfulness program, a virtual program during COVID. And, it's so awesome. It's in schools all over the US and Canada now. So kids get to see me on a screen. And even though I left my teaching job, I'm still teaching every single day, just in a different way. And one of the episodes that I created, part of the curriculum, was anxiety is your friend. So when I was taking this fear course, I was like, wow, I was already teaching this. I was helping kids understand that when they feel that rise in their blood pressure, their heart pounding, they're sweating, that's usually something that's calling out their name. It's their soul saying, hey, let's do this. This is something we want to do. So here I am doing this podcast because I felt that this morning. I was on my morning drive. I take a morning drive every morning, and it's my way of connecting with myself and with God and the universe and my angels. And I hear what they want me to do today. And I had so much resistance. I was like fearing speaking to the point where I started to cry. And I was feeling like it was life or death. Like if I speak, I die. And I immediately heard the phrase past lives. So I was like, all right, maybe I died in a past life for speaking my truth, for going against the grain. And that's my fear. I've always feared public speaking, which is funny because I was a teacher. I taught in the classroom for 17 years. I was always speaking in front of a group, but it is different with children and it's different with your peers and an audience. So one of my biggest fears is speaking to groups of people who I don't know and I'm not comfortable with. So I'm moving through that. So this podcast is very first one. I'm so proud of myself. I'm moving towards my fear and I just feel like it is probably something that I'm going to love doing. And I just have to step through that first little door, that little trap door that I just got to move through. And on the other side, it's going to feel amazing. So I hope this is encouraging you to do the same. If you feel that heart pumping, you feel that anxiety building, pause, put your hand on your heart, hand on your belly, breathe deeply into your belly and say, Spirit, what are you trying to tell me? Body, what do you want me to do? And it's usually that first voice is your answer. Okay, so now that you guys know kind of the gist of why I'm here and the importance of it, it's for me to break through my own barriers. Let's dive in. So I am 40 years old, single, and when I grew up, I was the youngest of four, grew up with a beautiful family in New Jersey, right outside of Philly. And we all were, pretty athletic. My parents were both very athletic. They both went to Temple University, and that's where they met in Philly. And they were both going to be health and PE teachers. And my dad ended up pulling away from that to go do the family business, which is a welding supply company. My pop-up Thornton, he was an underwater welder in World War II. So that's pretty cool that now I am living this mini entrepreneur life. I admire him so much. Coming back from the war, starting his own business. It was so brave, right? I just wish. And what's so cool is I think in like 6th or 7th grade, I had to do a project where I had to interview somebody who was in the war. And I remember sitting at their circular table in their kitchen with a little lamp over our head. And I was asking him all these questions. And it's such a profound memory for me, but I don't really remember all the answers. But I just remember being so intrigued by it. And now in my adult years, I can see how brave that was, that he took that leap of faith, started that business, and now it is booming. It is so good. It has fed all of our families in the Thornton family. I have 12 cousins, and my dad has 4 siblings, and my papa was able to provide college funds for all of us. He just did such an amazing job. And then my dad, who recently passed a year ago on August 12th, 2021, he's the same way. He just was able to provide for us, and he dedicated his whole life. He worked. He loved his work. He literally lived there and he lived for us kids. But we grew up in this lovely home. It's a small home in Delran, New Jersey. Playing sports. My dad was doing that work. My mom was a teacher. She basically taught at every school that we went to, and they tried to get us the best education. We went to Catholic school, and my mom kept teaching at these Catholic schools so that we could get in for free. And we could, we were middle class. So it was like doing the best we could to make ends meet, but not be strapped. So currently I'm unpacking my relationship with money in regards to my parents, and I'm doing a good job of it. I'm seeing it. I'm unlearning the belief systems, because my dad grew up with parents that were in the war. So it was kind of like he grew up very frugal and he wore the same sneakers his whole life. And then my mom worked like 3 jobs through high school and college. She was such a hard worker. She grew up in Philly, kind of a tough broad. And then when she met my dad, they had this like steady business and steady income. So she was like, freedom. So she was a spender. She loved to buy gifts for people. She still does. So I saw my dad, who was very frugal, and my mom, who was like, it's okay. We have the money. We can do it. And she kind of just spent. So it's kind of like opposite ends. So then I kind of adopted more of my mom's traits. But anyway, that's besides the point. I'm assuming that I will do that a lot in this podcast, but that's like the basis of my home life. And it wasn't always easy. There was a lot of trauma in the household. My parents definitely didn't have the most loving relationship, and I'll get into that in other episodes. And I grew up a lot in survival mode. I felt like I was the youngest of 4. Everyone would take things out of my hands and be like, here, Michelle, I'll do this for you. And I'll do this for you. And they were very helpful, but that hindered my ability to learn. So my adult self has a fear of trying new things because I feel like I can't do it unless somebody else is doing it with me or for me. So for me, even to start YouTube, to start a website, it was pretty debilitating fear, because I felt like I can't do it alone. I always have to have help. So that's been a big barrier for me to move through. So fast forward, grew up playing sports, was like a B, C student my whole life, always felt like I wasn't smart enough, always felt the pressure to be as smart as my siblings. My one sister, Holly, is incredibly smart. So I always felt like just a little bit beneath my siblings. And literally, I was the youngest. So I did always feel like the stupid one. I was really good at sports, though. So I felt like I had that going for me. um, and I also was always like the thicker one. I was like the bigger sister. I wasn't overweight, but I just was like, I looked older. So they would always assume I was older because I was the bigger one. People called me big boned when I was little. So I have a little bit of conditioning around that, which I've had to unlearn. Um, I was also kind of the friend who everybody thought she was friends with everybody else. So I spent a lot of time feeling lonely in my childhood, even though I was surrounded by people all the time. Our house was the hub. People would just come there. We'd play volleyball in the backyard. We'd jump in the pool. Our neighborhood was filled with wonderful kids. I was actually best friends with Carly Lloyd. Shout out to her. She's like one of the best soccer players in the world now. Um, Her, my friend Kimmy, and I, the three of us were like the three musketeers. We would play jailbreak. We would run. Carly lived like maybe 10 houses up from me. Kimmy lived 2 houses over. So we would do sleepovers and we would like scream to each other if we were leaving one house and going to the other house at like 10 o'clock at night, just to make sure we got to the door safe. I'd be like, I'm home. It was just like parts of my upbringing were so fun. And we would play house, we would play school. So there was a lot of joy in my childhood, but there was also a lot of suffering and surviving and fear and needing to be perfect and abuse and all the things. So as I was moving through friendships in high school and stuff, everybody always thought I was like popular and that I was friends with everybody else, especially since my mom taught at the school. So our last name was known and I have older siblings. So me coming up, everyone was like, oh, Michelle's, she's good. She's good. It's always been Michelle's good. But internally, I was suffering. I was always feeling alone. I was never feeling like I was good enough. Um, I just literally just always felt like I was alone and not good enough. And on the weekends, I was always wishing for people to call me to hang out. And it's like during field hockey season, I would hang out with the field hockey girls. And then basketball season, I would hang out with the basketball girls. Golf season, I'd hang out with the golf guys. Um, so it's like I had a variety of people, a lot of acquaintances, but I had like one solid friend, and that ended up falling away in college. There were some narcissistic tendencies that I felt like I was being controlled and I didn't realize it because it's just what you gravitate towards when you grow up in a household where there's those kind of personality traits. So as we move into my high school years, I had a couple boyfriends, nothing crazy. I had one long-term boyfriend for about 3 years. And he really, really made an impact on my life, and his parents did. They were so wonderful. I just felt like I was home for a couple years, when you're just kind of like feeling lonely everywhere and feeling like you have to be perfect. You got to do this. And your nervous system can just never be calm. He was like my first boyfriend where I finally felt like, I feel safe in his arms. He was a wrestler. He was funny. He was a blast to hang out with. I would go to his house and it would just be so fun. But he also showed me who I really was because he poked a lot of triggers in me. I was incredibly jealous. I was incredibly insecure. I felt the fear of abandonment all the time. We went to college. I could hear girls in the background when we were on the phone with each other. There was no FaceTime back then. And I remember just being so wounded and so triggered that I would hang up the phone and I would be sick to my stomach thinking he's going to find somebody better. And even today, I'm 40 years old and I still deal with that wound of I'm dating somebody and my mind is always finding somebody that's a better match for him. It's like I want to give them away. It's because I either don't feel worthy of it or I'm just expecting that abandonment to happen. And then I prove it right and it happens. And so I'm still working on that to this day. But moving into college, it was such a fun time in college. I played field hockey. I was really, really, really successful. I started and played almost every game of my whole career from freshman, we were national champions my junior year. We went 21-0. I got Woman of the Year. I got Defensive Player of the Year, Academic All-American, First Team All-American. Um, there was just so many wonderful times in college, but it was also some of my darkest times. I was exploring my sexuality. I dated a girl during that time. I was dealing with my mother wound, if you will. There was many times I'd go home from college and I'd be screaming F you and shutting the door of the house and going back to college because there was just so much of triggering and my mom triggering me. And I love my dad. My dad was always the calm one that would be in the garage, like making sure I had my laundry and all the food I needed. He'd be like, "Are you good, shush?" Sending me back to school. So I'm kind of in this episode, I'm kind of just giving you a snapshot, even though it's long-winded, of who I am and what I came from, because everything else will make sense now that you know this. And then in other episodes, I'm going to dive deeper into my high school years and dive deeper into my college years. So I also dated all kinds of people, all different races in college. I didn't do a ton of like hooking up. I was more of a girl that's like, I probably have only slept with maybe 8 people, I think. If I count back correctly, I'll do that at another time. But I'm not so much somebody who's quickly to open up her energy and just give it away. I've only ever kissed a guy randomly at a bar once. So I really have to know you. I have to feel safe with you. I have to know that it's okay to open myself up to you. And there's been certain times where I'm like risky and like I want to do the wrong thing and do things behind closed doors where nobody knows. Like, I have that little wounded girl in me, and that kind of comes from sexual abuse. I was sexually abused as a little girl. So I innately tried to do things not being seen. So in the beginning, I used to always gravitate towards people that were taken, who were in other partnerships. And it was like a thrill. And it was the wounded part of me looking to replay. I was being intimate, unwillingly. I didn't know any better because I was a little girl, but it was done behind closed doors. It was done in a closet, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have any memory of it. And I consciously don't know what I was thinking when it was happening, if I knew it was wrong, if I was feeling abused. I just had the memories of it when I turned 37 that I remember being in a closet and being taken advantage of. So it's like I was dissociated from that, but now as an adult, I tend to gravitate towards that hidden kind of relationship where nobody knows about it. So I'm really aware of that, and I love that about myself, that I can see it and I can honor it and I cannot judge myself because I couldn't help what happened to me. And that does shape your personality, and until you unlearn it and like heal those wounds, you can't see it unless when you see it, you can heal it. So I'm still working through a lot of wounding around love and partnership. I feel like I have a lot of situations from my past that have made me run away from partnership and run away from commitment. Even with my parents' situation, I just didn't see what unconditional love looked like or felt like. So now I think I struggle with being in that because it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel right because I'm so used to the opposite. So in college, I kind of like tried out a bunch of different types of people and we're really trying to figure out who I am. And then when I got out of college, I got my first job teaching, and I taught at that school for 14 years. So my very first job that I ever had, I don't have any experience interviewing with jobs. I worked for my dad's company in college. I worked at a golf course that we belonged to. So it didn't really feel like it was like something I had to interview for. They kind of just were like, "Oh, Michelle, you want to help out here?" So I had zero experience with like putting myself out there, doing applications. Even in college, I literally had a coach come look at me for field hockey from Rowan University, and they were like, "Hey, we'd love to have you." And I was like, "Okay." I had a couple colleges, but that felt right. So I just went with it. So I didn't even fill out college applications. So I kind of was just like, everybody did everything for me, which was terrible because I had zero experience taking action on things by myself. So it's like the universe took care of me all those years and other people did. And now as an adult, it's my job to get everything done on my own. And I really struggle with it. So when I got my first teaching job out of college, they found out I was a golfer and they were like, oh my gosh, I was going to coach field hockey. And then they found out that I was a golfer. So like, we need some female golfers. Would you mind coaching? And this is where I met my daughter's father. So I was 23 years old. I believe he was 44, 45, if I remember correctly. And he was the golf coach. And we ended up that spring playing golf every day together. And I'm like, I was actually dating somebody at the time. I was dating like another history teacher at the school. We were like low key dating. I wasn't really feeling it. I was really liking him for a bit, but then I was like drawn to this golf coach who's so much older than me. And I'm like, what am I thinking? But it was his energy. I just wanted to be around him 24/7. He made me laugh. I felt safe. I felt calm in his presence. Um, and it just felt good. And, we dated for 9 years. So we started dating maybe in that summer after my first year. Gosh, I can't even remember. I think it was, I think it was even in May or June, we started to really talk. We exchanged numbers outside of like golf talk. And then we golfed like all the time that summer. We kept it silent for a year because we were both like, this is not going to last. I'm half your age. He actually wouldn't date me. I had to like talk him into dating me. But we kept it silent for a year because I'm like, what is my dad going to think that I'm dating a guy that's almost my dad's age? And it just was such a difficult situation to navigate because I'd never done that before, but yet I couldn't help it. I felt so safe with him and I felt so happy, and we just had so much fun. We loved going out to eat, and I was in a phase of my life where I never really drank. I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never smoked weed. Even to this day, I'm so proud of myself that I never did that. And growing up, I just was not a drinker. I maybe drank a couple times in college, and it just wasn't for me. I just didn't like it. And then I met Bill, and he was a recovering alcoholic. So I was like, perfect. I don't like to drink. You're not drinking. This is like the perfect match. And it was awesome. We dated for I guess it was 8 years. Um, and we traveled. We would go to Arizona and golf. We actually didn't travel a lot, but we did as much as we could. But we traveled locally to all different golf courses. That was his thing. He was a scratch golfer. And he has an amazing story. His life story is really, he's been through a lot. He's a warrior. But we both decided, like, you know what? We love each other. I don't really believe in marriage at the time because I didn't see a healthy marriage with my parents. And he had been divorced, and he's like, I'm good, never getting married again. He's like, I like what we got and I don't want to change it. I'm like, me too. Meanwhile, now I definitely want to get married. I love the idea of sacred union and sharing life with somebody and that commitment. So we decide to start a family. So we're like, you know what? We don't need to get married, but I saw my niece Eva being born. She was born on 1/1/2011. So when I saw Eva born, I was just like, I want to know, I want to have kids. And I said my whole teenage college years, I'm like, I'm never having kids. I'm going to be single forever. And I'm just going to explore and have fun. It's kind of funny. Here I am now, single, no kids. Well, one daughter, but in heaven. But so it's funny. I always said that. And then him and I saw Eva born, and I'm like, I want to have a baby. I was like, this feels so right. And he was like, it does. And he's like, let's do it. And he was so amazing. He had already had a daughter. He had one daughter in his previous marriage, but he was willing to go through it all over again for me just because it's what I wanted. He was that kind of man. He would drive home from work every day and call me and be like, Shush, do you need anything? Every single day. He taught me how to love. He taught me what unconditional love is. And I owe so much to him. And, he had his insecurities too about dating a younger woman. We would go to weddings and there would always be this little thing. We would go to weddings and it would be like our wounds would come out because he would be worried that I'd want to be dancing with somebody younger. He didn't like to dance. I love to dance. So we had these pieces of our personality that didn't match. And I'm not saying that's what initially ended it, or eventually ended it, but we did have these little moments where we didn't click, and it was okay. And it was nice for me to experience that contrast. So we decided to start a family. We were so blessed. We got pregnant very quickly. We did the chalkboard updates every month. I was showing my belly. I loved being an artist and like drawing on the chalkboard and posting it on social media. And I'll go into a whole episode about the story of my daughter, but we ended up having a daughter. She was born with a muscle disorder, and she literally changed our lives. And it was something that I can't even describe how painful, powerful, transformational. She is why I'm here right now. And her name is Micah Dillon Turner. And she was born on July 13th, 2012. And I'm literally going to dedicate a whole episode about her and her story. But so moving through childhood years, high school, college, now you guys can see in my 20s, I never really had like a party phase. I never really traveled. I didn't do too much. I only went to a few golf places with Bill. And here I am, 30 years old, having a baby with a muscle disorder. She passes away 6 weeks later. I now feel in my heart, I'm kind of expediting the story. I now feel in my heart that Bill and I are not a match anymore. It's like the universe turned off the light switch and I was seeing him more like a brother. And I was like, what is going on? Now I have to break up with him. We just lost our daughter. Like, what are you doing, Michelle? What is wrong with you? But it was a complete awakening. I was being called to go somewhere else, to do something else. I was now turned on, tuned in, tapped in, and turned on. I was awake. And not saying he wasn't, but we were just in different, we were in different realities. And I had to go to bed every night knowing that I needed to do this and I didn't know how. And I talked to my therapist and she's like, just wait until the end of the school year. You can't do it in the winter because it's dark, it's gloomy. You just lost a baby. He's in a fragile state. Well, the universe took care of it. Unfortunately, you can't, again, I learned you can't plan life. We were decorating. I did interior decorating as like a side job, aside from teaching and coaching all those years. And I had my own blog and I loved blogging about it. And I blogged about my daughter too. If you ever want to check out my blog, it's weheartmicah.blogspot.com. The whole story's on there. You'll see pictures of Bill and I and Micah. I have to somehow figure out how to protect that site to make sure that never somehow gets taken down. I was thinking about that the other day. But anyway, shoot, where was I at? So I knew I needed to end things with Bill, but I just didn't know how to do it. How do you break up with somebody when you love them to death but you also just went through this horrific loss, you're grieving. But I just knew it. And the universe ended up doing it for us. We were decorating, we were at Target. I needed pillows for this one room that we were doing for this sweet girl. And my phone was in my car. And I asked Bill to go get it for me. I was like, hey, I left my phone in the car. I need pictures of the room to match to the pillows. He's like, I got you, babe. I'll go get it. He was always like that. He always just would drop anything for me. And I was the same for him. And he had seen something in my phone about me talking to my sister about possibly ending things with him. And it was like, oh my God, what made him go through my phone? Why is this happening? Oh my God, oh my God. Like I didn't want him to find out this way. And him and I had an agreement from the very first time we started dating, because we were silent about it for a year. That built such trust and such commitment with each other. We were down for each other. No matter what, we had each other's backs. So he felt immensely betrayed because I had stepped out of our relationship, talked to my sister about it, and we had just gone through this loss. But I needed that. I needed somebody outside of it to talk to because I didn't know what I was experiencing. So we talked it out that day. We finished the decorating job. He was so amazing. He helped me finish. We hung the curtains. We finished the room. It was beautiful. And then we were broken up. And then we had to separate. And we stayed in my condo. I owned a condo. I think I went and stayed at my parents' house for a little bit. I can't remember. And that just totally transformed my life. Things just really started to change after that. I started to work out. And him and I worked out together after loss. We both lost like 40 pounds in 6 months after our daughter passed. So we were like, feeling badass in our bodies, feeling strong with our grief. And then once we broke up, it was like, well, who am I now? I don't have my partner. I don't have my daughter. Like, who am I? And it wasn't even, my spiritual awakening still didn't happen for like another, 5 or 6 years. So much has happened in my life in that time when I broke up with Bill to where I am now. But that really was my first awakening, was, why am I here? Where did my daughter go? Like how I I didn't know. I didn't know what I believed in. I grew up Catholic, but I really wasn't somebody who prayed all the time. It was just one of those things like, what do I believe in? Where do I go from here? So I'm feeling like, I know this is an abrupt end, but something in my body is saying end this right now. So I'm going to end this first episode here. And I'm going to start the next episode from this spot of, where do I go from here? Where do I go from just, being single, newly single after 8 or 9 years, and losing a daughter, grieving, feeling so lost in my life, and what happens next? What does Michelle do right after that? And it's cool for me to look back and already know that answer. And some of you who know me, maybe you already do. But in the next episode, I'm going to dive into how her loss sparked this massive spiritual awakening 6 years later. So episode 2 will be my spiritual awakening story 6 years later. And then I'll come back and talk about what happened in those 6 years on another episode. So I hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being here. If you've listened this long, I love you to pieces. And I hope this inspires you to start life mapping, start looking back at your life and see all the cool things you've done, why you've done them. Take a look at your fear. What is holding you back? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Why are you not doing the things that you're doing? I know that I'm so proud of myself that I sat down to film this and record this for all of you, even though all morning I didn't want to. I felt the fear in my body. I felt my heart racing, but I knew it was something I had to do. So I challenge you with this first episode, what is your heart calling you to do? I always say your heart is a magnet, and it is, when it beats with joy, it is drawing everything that you desire to you. So listen to that beat. All right, lovies, I will see you in the next one, or you'll hear me in the next one. All right, peace out.